They've made the victim strip in front of the camera.
Okay.
And these are women. 7,000 crores has been ciphered off India. It has gone
7,000
abroad.
crores.
7,000 crores.
How do they get that kind of in-depth details? You said that they'll be knowing your Aadhaar card number, like the bag details. So how do they get that information?
They could zoom in and take your fingerprints, impersonate that in a silicon thumb, and withdraw. Very recently, there was a case where a husband committed suicide based on a loan act fraud because he couldn't undergo the harassment these criminals do.
What's the need of getting that kind of technology, ma'am? Don't you think we are actually heading too fast too ahead without having that kind of infrastructure or that kind of a knowledge to the people to be educated how to not get defrauded by them?
You don't need to go to the police station as such to report it.
Where do you intervene when the crime has already been committed? What is the ratio of people coming and complaining about the cybercrime which they have suffered? Instagram, the entire family people will be there. Kids will be there.
Do you think kids and family people all go to the pornographic websites?
Law students, I don't know why, we keep on getting into political debate or something.
That gets imbibed in you. 5 years you would have been paying that way. It gets into your blood. People are exposed to using social media. People are not exposed to the consequence of it.
Hey guys, this is Harsha Prabhakar and we welcome you to our podcast Coffee with Counsel. I have a question for you people today. Do you believe in law of attraction or manifestation? You know, if you think hard enough of it, it's going to find you in one or the other way. But personally, I'm not sure about it. If I speak about a Goa trip for tomorrow, my Instagram will be about it for the entire day. And if you and me think that it's the law of attraction or the universe speaking, then we are in a very wrong place. So today we have a very special guest, Priyanka Vaidyanath, who is a cyber intervention security officer who explains how the world of algorithm works, how the digital era works, and how to safeguard ourselves from the digital scams. So welcome to the show, guys, and enjoy the show. Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, Harsha.
So first question on what you do.
Okay, so I work as a cybercrime intervention officer at a company, at a non-profit organization called ISAC. So ISAC as such works largely into cyber security domain. However, they have a social impact platform called Cop Connect.
Okay.
So as the name goes, we help victims. This is completely victim oriented. We help them in telling what is the right way, what is the wrong way, and help them to connect to the cops, because most of the times cyber victims don't know whether to go to the cop or to file a complaint online. Or in case of financial fraud, should they go to the bank first or the cop first? They wouldn't know.
Okay. Let's speak about the intervention.
Yes.
Don't you guys supposed to be the victim supporting team or something? Why intervention? Like, where do you intervene when the crime has already been committed?
Okay. So it's a good question that you asked. We do intervention primarily post incident.
Yeah.
But we also have done tremendous job in between the incident. Like, for example, you would have heard something called as digital arrest.
Yeah.
Yes, that's been happening left, right, and
Can
center.
you explain what is digital arrest if somebody is unaware of it?
Okay, so digital arrest is where you will get a call from a cyber criminal
Okay.
who has impersonated himself to be a police officer.
Oh, okay.
So he would impersonate in such an extent that his attire, his background, everything would be that of a police environment.
Okay.
He would first call you and say, for example, there are many ways. For example, he would say, your name, your Aadhaar has been linked to a money laundering crime.
Okay.
And we have seen a certain illegal transaction in your account. And because of that, you are under arrest. And they wouldn't directly tell you you're under arrest. They would say, my superior wants to talk to you over a video. So can you please come on a video call? So it would either be on a Skype or WhatsApp video call. And once the victim switches on the video call, they play with the psychology of the victim to such a great extent that they are not even let to move. We have had cases where victims have been in the same place without food, water, and washroom for about 2-3 days straight.
Ooh.
We have had victims where they say we need to check if you don't have any microphone inside your clothes. They've made the victim strip in front of the camera.
Okay.
And these are women. They made even a women victim strip in front of the camera with a pretext saying that, they want to see if there is any hidden phone or something like that.
Okay.
And they completely play with the psychology of yours.
Okay.
So India has such as lost huge amount,
Yeah.
out of which 7,000 crores has been siphoned off India. It has gone
7,000
abroad.
crores.
7,000 crores.
My God.
So you don't know that is used for what activity.
Yeah, that's right.
We don't know. So this is what is digital arrest. So coming back to the intervention part of it, when we have got calls from, let's say, the victim's wife or spouse saying, my husband or my wife has been a victim of digital arrest and he's there. So we have intervened and told them to bravely shut down the laptop. So what happens in these kind of situations is, number one, we kind of save them from giving away money or being in front of the camera for about this long. But however, they are so impacted psychologically, they're not ready to do it. We have even advised victims to go stay in a hotel for 3-4 days. They've done that because they're so scared. So what these impersonated police, these cyber criminals do is, they say if you shut down the camera, if we have a police jeep standing right outside your house, who would take you? So they are so scared to even go and cross check because your psychology is so captured.
Okay.
And they wouldn't. They sit in front of the camera for hours and days together.
Like, I mean, how do they get that kind of intimidating, in-depth details? You said that they'll be knowing your Aadhaar card number, like, I mean, plus the bag details. So what kind of money they will be, I guess.
Yes.
How do they get that information? Such an intimidating information.
So there are many ways how our data gets leaked. I can tell you one of the ground level manner how our data gets leaked. For example, let's say you go to a stationery shop to take your Aadhaar card Xerox. Now, let's say you would have asked for 2 copies, and he would have taken 3 copies. He would have kept one in the machine and given 2 more copies back to you. Would you go and cross check the machine if there is more copies?
No.
Nobody would do, right? And I'm not telling every shop does this, but this is one of the modus operandi is how our data gets leaked. And even today, the BNS categorizes, Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita categorizes cybercrime as an organized crime. So there are this entire organized group of people rather, who are working. And these Aadhaar cards are sold anywhere between 5,000 to 2,000 rupees.
For a bunch of other code or for a copy?
One copy would go for 500.
Oh, okay.
So it varies up to the extent and the kind of people's Aadhaar is being leaked.
I mean, is there any way to save ourselves from getting that kind of Aadhaar card get leaked?
Definitely. So while we see physically, it's impossible for you to kind of not go to the station shop and not get a Xerox of it, because Aadhaar is the most widely used ID card of ours, right? However, one good thing is you have a way how you can lock your Aadhaars.
Okay.
So we have a app. The government has an app. Government of India, UADI, has an app called mAadhaar. If you install it either on your iPhone or on your Android, you can lock 2 things over there. One is your biometric and one is your Aadhaar number. So if somebody is trying to use your Aadhaar, it gives you a prompt.
Oh, all right.
So only if you accept or you give consent to it, can the Aadhaar be used. So if not, the Aadhaar is locked. So you can do this either by installing this app called mAadhaar, or you go to the UADAI website, log in with your credentials, and that particular website is so useful. It gives you your authentication history also, where all your Aadhaar was used. Was it used just by its number? Was it used by your biometric? All details is given to this website. So the only probably I feel is awareness, where people should be knowing that government has done all of this. And along with this, I would want to add something more. Now, I spoke about how our Aadhaar gets leaked, right? They use this Aadhaar to issue SIM cards.
Yeah.
Because no criminal would use his own details to buy a SIM card and commit a fraud. Now, there is also a website by government where you put in your mobile number and you get an OTP, you log in. It tells you how many numbers are issued under your Aadhaar.
Oh, all right.
Yes, it's called TAFCOP, TAFCOP, TAFCOP. It goes to a website called sancharisathi.com. It is a government of India website. So I think timely check, at least quarterly once, if you keep checking on this website, you'll at least know if there are any numbers that are already being issued in your name or not.
Got it.
Yes.
I mean, don't you think the Aadhaar card is kind of like major reason for, I mean, one of the major reasons for these things to be happening? Because all of our data, including the biometrics, such an intimidating details are there to the government. Okay, let the government be having those kind of details, but government not protecting it to the level which we are expecting. Don't you think, I mean, Aadhaar card is the major cause root of the problem or such?
Well, Aadhaar card is, I wouldn't say it's a root cause. The only thing is it is probably somewhere aiding the criminals to do it. However, I wouldn't say government is not taking steps, right? Like the example of M-Aadhaar, where you can lock your Aadhaar. You can,
If I don't have Aadhaar, what if I can't access the Android phone? Because the if you look at the ratio population of the India, the uneducated, illiterate people, they will be on the Aadhaar card as well, and they won't be able to do the such kind of things.
okay.
Then only.
So again, I'll slightly contradict to what you're saying. We have n number of rural people who are using Android phones,
Yes.
right? It's not only that in urban area, we also have somebody in rural areas also who are using Android phones. Now, probably the thing is they wouldn't know that they can lock their details, right? Now, the awareness of locking Aadhaar has come up in the urban area, right? There are people who are proactively giving awareness, and all of those were, there was actually Aadhaar based financial fraud that had happened few months back.
Mm.
It's called AEPS, Aadhaar Enabled Payment System.
Okay.
Okay, so the government has given an option where just by using your Aadhaar and biometric, you can withdraw money.
What's the need of getting that kind of technology, ma'am? Don't you think we are actually heading too fast too ahead without having that kind of infrastructure or that kind of a knowledge to the people to be educated how to get not get defrauded by that?
Okay, so the intention why government came up with AEPS was to help the rural India, because rural India did not get. Now let's say suppose some in a village there's a person who does not have a ATM card and he wants to withdraw money. Aadhaar is there with everybody now because it's a mandate, so he can withdraw money just by using his Aadhaar card. That was the intention of.
What will be the process of it? Withdrawing the money by the other cards. Are they supposed to go to the bank or can we do it in the ATM itself?
They could go to the ATM vending machine, give their Aadhaar details, give their verify through their biometric, and withdraw money. But there is a limit. They can withdraw maximum only up to 10,000 a day,
Oh, all right. Okay.
right? So this whole setup that was started for the rural India was misused in urban India. So criminals targeted the urban population, and biometrics were leaked in n number of ways. And using that, they started withdrawing money off the urban population. So biometrics were leaked, let's say, even through iPhone. Strong HD cameras you have, even with your Android phones.
Yeah.
Now, suppose, let's say, you would have posed in certain way where your thumb or your fingers are shown to the camera. They could zoom in and take your fingerprint, impersonate that in a silicone thumb, and withdraw.
Oh, then I mean, I guess the Apple people have one more advantage.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Never heard about those kind of stuff actually. Yes. I mean, are these stuffs are happening only in India or like what about the other country?
So the impersonating fingerprints or biometric is happening abroad as well.
Okay.
But the only thing is we have a large population and everybody does have Aadhaar. So the impact that you see is higher than India because of the population we have in India.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yes.
But are the actual cases are coming out? What do you think is the, I mean, on the grassroots level, what is the ratio of people coming and complaining about the cybercrime which they have suffered?
Okay, it is slightly getting better, but I would say people yet feel a sense of shame when they become a victim of cybercrime, because what we see is a lot of educated people also are being victim of this crime, right? And they feel they don't want to put it out loud because their dignity and respect would be compromised. So this is one of the reasons for underreporting of cybercrime cases. And the government has done tremendous job in terms of the ease of access in reporting cases. You don't need to go to the police station as such to report it.
Okay.
Right? You have online portals which is doing pretty good job. You have helpline numbers also. But the only point is this. And for the people who are they're rich in terms of money, right? For them, losing certain meager amounts like 25, 30,000 doesn't matter. They will let go,
Yeah, that's right.
right?
Why? Why do you think that is happening? Because of the social stigma?
Yeah, the whole point is yes, but they don't want to say that they might have been a victim of a financial fraud or cybercrime case. And because that would also mean that they have somewhere been negligent about how they can safeguard themselves. And sometimes people don't want to report it because their dignity and respect is at stake. So they will try to somehow talk to officials or somewhere and see how they can secure in future, but not in terms of reporting the case.
But what are the chances if, let's say, I lost around like 10 lakh for the digital arrest or whatever the reasons? What is the ground reality on how much money they'll be getting back once they go through the process? Like, can there be what if they intervene? Let's say the thing happened. If I come to you immediately for you or the cops, if I go to them immediately, can my money be saved?
Yes.
What is the major mistake which people do which shouldn't be done?
Okay. So especially in terms of financial frauds, since you're focusing on that, government again, I would say, has done a good job in terms of creating a pathway for refund. All right. So there are certain RBI guidelines which has given you certain timeline. If you complained within that timeline, your refund is quicker. Now let's say a UPI transaction, you realize it's a fraudulent transaction and you report it to the respective authorities on time, they can reverse the transaction. Good. Right?
Oh.
Or now currently the I4C, which is the center in center, they look after the whole aspect of cyber issues, right? So you have bank officials who are sitting there currently. And I don't think any other country does this. So when there's a financial fraud and you report it within the golden hour, 24 hours, or you report it, the chances of refund is higher. And why do I say this is they take a quick action to either freeze the transaction or freeze the account. Now let's say you have delayed. How it works is now you have delayed and there are n number of liens on the same account. Currently, it goes as a first come first serve. Both of us have been victim of financial frauds. You go to the court first for your compensation. So court would see how much money is left in the said criminal account. They would give it to you. And I go a little later and there's no money in the account. They would say there's no money left, sorry.
I mean, isn't general tips which you're supposed to follow when we are sharing a data online or like to get awarded by these kind of things? I mean, except for locking of our Aadhaar card and using masked Aadhaar card or something. Is there any something which can be done? I mean, as a precaution, which you think hasn't been used to our advantage? Is there anything that kind of untouched?
So there is no tip as such I would tell you, but I think we all should start maintaining cyber hygiene.
All right.
Like for example, at least 2 days once, just go through your bank applications and check if your account is fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? So many times what have happened, we have had cases where the account would have been frozen because there would be some kind of an illegal transaction. They wouldn't even realize until 10 days, 15 days. And then they're trying to do something and they're not able to do any transaction and realize something is wrong with that. So just have a please be aware. Just go through your bank applications, see if your account is fine, and especially when you're scanning QR codes, be very cautious. Cross check with the vendor wherever you're scanning. Is this your name? Right? Because there are cases where on the QR code there are criminals who stick their QR codes and go. Even the vendors wouldn't know.
Yeah.
There is a transaction made, but there is no money which is credited into his account. So through QR code again, they can siphon off the entire money from your account. There are many ways how this can happen. So just be very cautious. And the other thing is try and see if you can update yourself with the ongoing cyber tips. Like for example, one kind of a modus operandi in cybercrime would not last for more than 6 months. So I would say personally, every 4-5 months the modus operandi changes.
Oh, even they have a schedule for that.
Oh yeah, they do, because people will get to know, right,
Oh,
what to do, how to secure.
right now.
So there's a new thing called jump scam, where you have a UPI transaction. You get credited with certain money, and you will be very surprised and happy, saying, oh, 5,000 or 10,000 has come to my account. And later you would get a call saying, I have mistakenly sent money to you,
Order.
and please reverse the transaction. So they would talk in such nice, innocent way through the UPI based thing, and you would say, all right. There have been people very kind enough to give back the money. And they would say, I will give you my UPI ID. Kindly do it. And when you put in your PIN, the entire amount would go away from your bank, from your account.
All right.
It's not just that 5,000 or 10,000 that would
they're
go.
having the control to how much to get.
Yes, how much they can take. So it's not just either 5,000 to 10,000 that you was created in your account wouldn't go back. Whatever the balance is left would go back. So one of the better ways is, most of us have either 2 or 3 accounts in banks.
Yeah, that's right.
Just have one account for UPI transaction or any online transactions you want to make. Park your funds in a place where you don't have access to UPI,
Okay, got it.
right?
Yeah.
And don't keep your balance up to lakhs. Make an FD or do something where it's not easy to crack.
How else they can transfer to a friend like me?
Definitely, no?
I mean, let's go to the topic of how the Australia is getting the law of underage people, like the age of 16 or below, or, I mean, not able to access the social media or something. Do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing?
It's definitely a good thing.
Why?
Definitely a good thing. Because kids these days um, are so exposed to a lot of content online. And unfortunately, the platforms like Instagram or Snapchat do not have a procedure for verification of age.
Yeah, always.
Right? It says Instagram can be used by 13 and above, but you have kids below 13 years of age who have Instagram accounts.
Isn't like even we used to lie on the Instagram when we started using
Yes.
the Facebook.
So where is the control then? I have come across kids who have business accounts on Instagram. Age 11, age 12. They have business accounts. So when they're doing business, would you cross check if you're doing a business with a minor?
No. So
No.
then we'll be in trouble. Actually, the law says
Yes.
it's your job to make sure there is not a minor.
Yes. So we have come across cases where kids are doing business on Instagram. We have come across cases where minor girls get groomed on the social media platforms. We have come across cases where let's say a small kids below the age of 18 are in a relationship, and they would do a lot of sexually explicit acts on Instagram live. So even though they think the live is there for about, let's say, 5 minutes and it's gone, there's a concept called digital footprint.
Yeah.
What is a digital footprint? Whatever you do online stays online. Now, even if you delete it from your account, it is not visible to your bare eyes. But the material is there.
Somewhere it like this.
It's there. It will never get deleted.
Oh,
Never.
never.
Never. So when you are creating a certain digital footprint, you got to be cautious online,
Okay.
right?
Then what we search will be always there. Like
Always there.
nobody gonna use it against us.
Definitely, definitely. There are certain websites who have done a certain research on the terms and services of all of these Meta and all of these Instagram, Facebook. And these websites give out their research outcome and says that, especially in the applications like Facebook and all, whatever you browse, they can view.
Oh.
Your private messages, Facebook can view.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Yes. Private messages are coming. They say it's an end-to-end encrypted. Also.
That's on WhatsApp.
Oh,
I'm talking about Facebook.
Okay.
They can view your private messages.
okay. Can the Facebook view my WhatsApp messages?
And if there is a way how it's end-to-end encrypted, I also strongly believe there's a key to decrypt it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
So I don't think it is a complete safeguarding your messages. Now, how do you think during investigation police can crack it?
Yeah. I mean, that's a weird thing. Like, how would they do that? No, usually they.
It's just a very technical subject. how the cybersecurity analyst would break into it. It's completely complete to technology that they are the
Management stating that when compared to Android and Apple, Apple has got a better security feature. Yeah, actually, what do you want to say about that?
So, I mean, again, so I go to schools to give awareness sessions. One of the most asked question is this. And when a student asks this question, the whole crowd cheers.
Oh, Apple fans, is it?
I mean, I don't know why there is this tussle between Apple and Android. And I personally wouldn't want to rate any one of it higher. Both have their own specific security features, right? Like even in terms of Android, there are ways how you can secure your mobile in most ways, but people are not aware of it. Apple makes a lot of sound and saying that we are securing your phone in this way, in that way. People believe it that it's more secure, right? But personally, I don't want to make a comment on this whether Apple is secure or Android is secure. What I feel is both do have features of security in their own different ways.
It depends on how you use.
How you use it, yes. Now, like for example, the other thing I told you, it's already there. But do people know about it? Right?
Yeah.
The lack of awareness and lack of knowledge is what matters. How you can settle
I
it.
think it's a major cause in India having that lack of knowledge. Like it happens whenever I speak with the guests, they will tell this: the people aren't being aware of the law. The people aren't aware. What do you make think like why aren't we aware of the law when such an intimidating details of us has been circulated widely? Or I don't know.
This is unfortunate and age-old problem. Don't you study while you study your constitution that we don't have right to waiver of fundamental rights? And what is the reason cases are given? That people are not aware that our fundamental right exists. Forget about all this. When we have a crowd and when we have such a huge population who don't even know we have a certain fundamental right that can save us, you are talking about something very high now. How do people not know about this?
Yeah.
Right? So, my point is when you do awareness, we majorly focus on urban areas. I think it should somewhere made. I think this is the same thing we speak about in any legal awareness we speak about, right? We would do all of this legal aid camps.
Yeah.
We go speak about women's property rights. I'm sure you would have witnessed how women still don't know they have rights for property in rural areas.
Yes.
Yes. When you come to urban population, yes, they are aware. They fight, they sue their own brothers, left, right, and center. All of this is happening. As simple as property rights, people still don't know in villages. Then how would you expect them to know about the cyber security tips in rural only?
Like, not about the I mean, let's talk about the majority, at least the 10% of the population, let's say my age or is the age gap of us. Like I've seen many of my friends Instagram account get hacked.
Yeah.
I mean, they will put, they once that get hacked, it will be usually them posting that I do this kind of a money, they ban it,
They have
ban
cryptocurrency issues.
yeah, cryptocurrency issues. Then having, and many people have left the account over there like to die it off. And I mean, obviously, I mean, now it has been become very common. Even we can make it out. It's been hacked, so even we stopped responding to it. But what is happening exactly over there?
See, the point is, majority.
Let's say if my Instagram account gets hacked, can I recover it?
Okay.
What should be next due process to be done?
Okay, so Instagram does have a way how you can recover your account or you can request for the account to be deleted. There's a process where you verify that you are the true rightful owner of your account. And of course, there's a procedure to do it. It's a lengthy procedure, but it can still be done. Or in case, let's say you have already filed a cyber complaint on the portal, with the acknowledgement, the law enforcement agencies can do that, right? But why the question as to why people's account get hacked is all because what I personally again feel is people are exposed to using social media. People are exposed to using a lot of things online. People not exposed to the consequence of it. And that is where I think you're doing a good job in doing all of this.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And let's speak about the topic which we were having the earlier topic of how a few Instagram pages, especially in India, running accounts based on solely on one thing. They are feeding literally on people whose intimating video or photos have been leaked, and they post those kind of clips, and they will say, "Follow me back," or else "Follow me," and I'm gonna lead you for a Telegram chat, and there we can actually access the video of it. Like, how is it happening so blatantly once such an intimidating thing has been leaked and someone else is commercializing the same thing to make a gain out of it. Why don't we have a law for that? Right?
Okay, so the whole thing that you're speaking of is this happening on a different platform, which was earlier also happening, right? You had pornographic websites
Yes.
where either one of the partner in a relationship would leak it on the website.
But I feel the difference between the pornography and Instagram is that pornography, if a person is going to the pornography, don't you think he's going for that kind of a content? That's fine. But Instagram, the entire family people will be there. Kids will be there.
Do you think kids and family people all go to the pornographic websites?
Oh. Personally, I don't go.
Come on. So, as I was pointing out, initially you had this website as a platform which was hosting these contents. Now you have social media platforms which is giving you ease of access of viewing the contents. It's just that's the only difference, right? And when you are speaking of pornography, watching or viewing pornography in private as such, it's not a crime as such. But there's an exception if you are viewing child pornographic content, that is a crime.
How is it going? The child pornography. I mean, are we able to like completely cut it out in India? How is it?
So yes, we are able to do good job in India. India has a cyber tip line where if anybody is viewing a child pornographic content, the center gets alerted about it and respective action is taken by the respective states police authorities.
Okay.
Along with this, we also have the recent judgment which has come, which says the very term called child pornography is vague. Because when you say pornography, it is consensual act. But there have been a non-consensual act from the child also sometimes. They might be exploited. They may be,
I can't give consent.
Yes, yeah. Minus consent is a no consent. So currently the judgment says you need to use the word child sexually exploitative abusive material, which is in fact a good move because it covers a lot of other things apart from consensual sexual act. Like for example, a girl who's stripping naked in front of a camera. It can be recorded, it can be spied, it can be recorded, and it can be leaked. Right? Even though the girl is voluntarily doing it, it would still fall under this particular category.
Yes. Okay.
So
It can't be like, I mean,
yes,
the child who actually that have changed the name except on it.
yes.
All right. I mean, if you want to share a story of being a cyber intervention officer, you've been a cyber intervention officer from past, let's say, 2 to 3 years, right, Mangi?
Yeah, close to 1.5 years.
2.5 years. Like, what was the kind of a case which if you want to share with us, spelled like, okay, can this happen? Or it's like, such an intriguing or you felt like questioning it.
So most number of cases that we get is financial frauds. That is anyways at a rise in India, financial frauds. And the modus operandi of financial frauds are different. It can either be based on Aadhaar, it can be based on loan apps. This is the most dangerous kind of financial frauds we have come across.
Okay.
So you have these applications on Play Store which lends you loan.
Yeah.
Right? And these loans are not for high amount. These are for petty amounts of 5,000, 10,000. And when you download a loan application, you would be downloading a APK folder, APK file. So APK stands for Android package, where your complete access to your phone would be with that of the criminal who's behind this. So they give you a loan very nicely. 25,000, they'll give you a loan of 25,000. But when it comes to the time of returning the loan, even though you have money to return, then they start harassing you. They start harassing you in such a way that I said you were downloaded an APK file. So they would have access to your contacts, they would have access to your photos. So in case of siblings or wife or husband, they would morph pictures of wife, send it to husband, harass him. If you don't give me so much of money, this will be leaked. Or in case, let's say it's a bachelor, then his contacts would get a message saying, abusive messages saying he is a rapist who raped his own parents, siblings, mother, or he's a druggist, he was caught by the police for abuse of drugs, stuff like this. Very recently, there was a case where a husband committed suicide based on a loan app fraud because he couldn't undergo the harassment these criminals do.
Like, what should the people do? I mean, like, obviously, they have to go to the cops. Like, will there be any action taken after going to the police? Like, do you think there will be any kind of repercussion for those people who are doing it? Or else do they just get away? Because that's the dilemma.
No, there have been cyber criminals who are caught. There have been successful stories And there are books written by LPS officers how they could catch hold of these whole group of people who are committing these frauds. And very smartly they sit in open fields where location is so unknown and commit crimes. All of it is there. Yes, they do get caught, but the only thing is it takes time.
Have you gone through something called the dark web?
Yes.
Have you had the access for it? Have you seen how it is?
I haven't personally done that. I probably haven't had the courage to explore dark web, but I have come across victims who have used dark web and got into trouble. There are so many things happening on dark web, which is not only related to cyber issues, but also, for example, narcotics. Earlier, narcotics are sold on dark web where people are getting easier access to it right now. So the outcome of dark web is not just a case of cyber issues, but a lot of other societal menace.
No, actually, I was like, I mean, I was watching one. I was reading somewhere over there. In dark web, apparently, you can, like there are few stuff where if you pay them certain money, they are gonna go kill a person life for you. Like, I mean, they can even you can get a kidney for kidney from dark web.
Get anything on dark web.
And why do government doesn't have control on dark web? Like,
No, so government is coming up. They do have threat intelligence. They have certain companies also who are monitoring dark web very closely, and they're giving certain reports to the government. I'm not saying government is ignorant about it, but it takes a while for a government also to come up with something very strong to regulate it. It's not very easy. Like, one most known story of government is banning of blue whale. Do you know the blue whale game?
yeah,
Yeah, right.
at last, at the end of the game, they're supposed to go kill them.
Yes. I mean, I should not be using the word, but you know what the end he gave it. Suicide was the last thing. So CERTIL, which stands for Computer Emergency Response Team in India, it was they who took the initiative and action to ensure that blue whale is being very dangerous to the society and shouldn't be there. Banning of it. And how could CERTIL do this? It again comes back to the law because IT Act gives them the directives and powers to do it.
I mean, did the IT Act come up actually? Like,
Yeah, we have the Information Technology Act.
but they were supposed to pass because there is a case which was going on the WhatsApp post. I mean, Union Government of India, the Facebook WhatsApp. They were
So those are the ancillary incidental cases which is coming out of the IT Act. IT Act is strongly been there since 2000.
Okay.
And IT Act as such covers two things. One is cyber contraventions, one is cyber crimes. So when I say cyber contraventions, it's something like civil issues, right? Like, for example, um, let's consider both of us are colleagues, and let's say you dislike me for some reason, and when I'm outside, you change my password, and I cannot access my own laptop. This is a cyber contravention, not letting an authorized person use his own her own device. It's a contravention.
so if they file a complaint, they'll be
Yes.
right. Oh.
Yes, absolutely. However, cyber crime deals with issues like hacking, identity theft, impersonation, privacy issues. So IT Act dealt with privacy long back.
Oh, all right. So let's go to the some other topic now altogether because you went for the practice of your after your LLM or something. LLM, you had done LLM, right? Then you came to the teaching. Then once again, like you went
Yeah,
for the
I moved from academics and now into
cyber.
cyber issues. Yes.
Out of three different stages, what made you take those three different altogether different professions? Like, I mean, related to the same law, but I mean, the methodology, everything changes.
Yes.
Like, what do you want to say about the that litigation, then the teaching, then this?
Oh.
What do you say about the three different things which you experiment?
Okay. In terms of litigation, it's personal passion, I would say, because I'm sure you also would know how much running around, the efforts at the time that you would be putting in. And I feel somewhere I was not ready to do so much in terms of time. I was not able to invest a lot of time into it. And that is where I thought, let me take a shift from litigation to academics. And academics, I thoroughly enjoyed, no doubt. I think I was there in academics for close to 7 years. And I completely enjoy being in academics. But somewhere I felt my knowledge is not being rightly impacted to the society,
Okay.
right? So, and there was also certain personal cases which drew me towards the issue of cybercrime, right? And once I started helping my close relative who was a victim of a cyber financial fraud, then I realized how there is so much dearth of knowledge right? So I think there's a gap, there's a bridge which has to be filled between the law that is there and how it can be used. So that's when I thought, okay, let me explore this area. And I should say, I think I'm the most happiest. I'm using two superlative degrees here, most and happiest. I think I'm most happiest. And I should also say, my 80% of my happiness comes from the place where I work.
Oh, okay. It's
Because
amazing to hear. I mean, using, I mean, everybody will be complaining the words
Yes.
they're having.
But as I told you, ISAC, right? They have this amazing platform called Cop Connect. So it is also an app you can download. And ISAC as such trained 21,000 volunteers all over India who are intervention officers. Yes. So all over India, you have people who are helping these cyber victims. And along with this, they also have come up with a new establishment called Cop Connect Cafe. It's a cyber wellness center basically. It's there in few institutions in Bangalore also, where the victims can get direct support. So I will just take a minute to tell you how this Cop Connect works. So Cop Connect is a social impact platform, and you have four kind of people on the platform. You have cyber first responders who act as people who can give first aid to victims. You have cyber psychologists who give you psychological counseling if you have become a victim of a cyber crime. And let me tell you, this is so important because most victims, either it can be of financial fraud or sextortion, they are mentally in a very, very vulnerable condition. They they can't even write out a proper chronology of events to file a complaint. So they need psychological help. So you on Cop Connect, you get access to cyber psychologists. You have cyber lawyers on the app who give you legal advice, and you have technical experts also. Where in terms of you need their help, like for example, Instagram hacking. Yeah. Right. So we have technical experts who would help you either to delete the account or recover the account. So it's an all-in-one platform that you have, and it is free to download. Once you download, you get direct access to the volunteers who are there around you. Through geolocation, it gives you access to volunteers. You can call them anytime, they'll help you out.
For any cyber crimes, like
Any cybercrime, either financial fraud, sextortion, or cyberbullying, which is so rampant in schools in India right now. So you can get contact with them, and these people are there ready to help you any time of the day.
Wow, that's nice.
Yeah.
Actually, that's true.
Yeah.
Then you guys are actually an amazing team. Like, what work you people are doing.
Yes.
I mean, to be frank, when I first joined the law, you were the major reason. I feel like, I mean, not only me, but my entire classmates who got into the mood. Uh, I guess that's where I actually learned how important the team is.
Yes.
Or else how important, if you're working on a space, or else if you're working with anyone for that matter, important is. I mean, if you can remember the first mood which I had,
Yeah.
I mean, I was we had first 2 rounds, it was around 32 teams, and you were the first person to conduct the freshers moot for us in BMS College of Law. And what happened was that we were only 4 teams are supposed to go for the semi-finals after the quarters. And we were the fifth team. And we had been to a courtroom where if you go there, obviously there is no coming back from the team. I mean, the myth is that they're not going to be qualified. And I guess we got disqualified. My team got disqualified by 2 to 3 marks.
Yes, very less.
Yeah, very less. Yeah, very less margin. And I mean, when the result was announced, I was with my classmates itself. And losing a mood for a student, I guess it's like a second worst thing which can happen. And especially KSLE student, first worst thing is like failing in 1 mark in the KSLE exam. I mean, I don't know why they do that. They keep on failing us by 1 mark or something. But the interesting part of the story is that once I went home, I literally turned off my phone. I couldn't like bear it because we spent around like a month or two researching on topic like what to do, what not to do, going consulting everyone. And I just slept off, I guess. Then in the morning, around like 7:38, I turned on my phone. I mean, to my surprise, one of the other team had backed out, I guess, because they had some panic attack apparently. And yeah, I mean, you had messaged me, like my teammates had messaged me congratulating. Then around like 10, I came to the college. I didn't even went through the memorial once again. We went literally went in semi-final. Anyway, it was like one more luck call for us. So we just wanted to take part in it. Semi-finals, we got qualified. Once again, finals, we went. Then I was like, okay, at least second prize is mine, dude. Fine. Like, I'm here at least. Then, yeah, man, we won. Like,
You won.
yeah, we won the mood. I mean, I couldn't believe it actually. But yeah, ma'am, I mean, what I learned was that we weren't the best team, to be very frank. We weren't the best speakers, we didn't add. The best researcher, we didn't add. But we were the team. I had a team where if I called them at 12 a.m. in the night, they would be turning a phone.
Yes.
That team, like, yeah, like, I mean, I guess, don't you think in a profession, like, because you have been practicing for so long, whether it is a personal relationship or it's a workplace, if they are choosing something, don't you think it should be that kind of a trust should be there where they're working?
Yes.
And
So, I have come across a lot of colleagues and I've worked in a lot of institutions. So, what I have personally learned is, of course, you would get into a certain personal level where you are close with your colleagues or your superior. But I feel at the end of the day, you should know where to draw the line.
yeah, that's an important.
That is much needed. If you give too much access to your personal life, if some minor thing that goes wrong on the professional space, you would be emotionally also damaged.
Yeah.
Or if you too much withdraw from being too highly professional, and I'm not going to speak about where my home is and things like that, and that will also affect you adversely, thinking something might be wrong with this person as such.
Yeah.
So I think in today's generation, I have come across in various domains where people somehow forget the very thin line of where it distinguishes between your professional space and your personal space.
Yes. And it has to be like, we have to keep it separate, right?
You have to. You have.
When it comes to the professional.
I mean, I do have colleagues whom I call best friends. We share a lot of common interests and ideas and the stuff. But when it comes to the part where we work, right? If let's say you are in a position where you will have to you're giving a report about him or her and you have to write something negative, it is so emotionally tough for you to do it. And professionally, it's not right. It's not your dharma to do it,
Yes, yes.
right?
So here.
So I think that is where you need to know
Yeah.
where to stop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I feel the law people are always into too much of a politics, if I don't get it wrong, because maybe law and philosophy goes hand in hand. They can't leave each other up. And that law and politics naturally come out as say, maybe, I don't know, like, have you ever experienced, or else, have you seen the cases in the law college or something? Because there are law students who will be watching it, I mean, they want to take part in it. And so what do you think about the politics which happens in the law life? Is it always like that, or is it only depending on the person to person?
Again, my views are very personal. What I feel is when getting to the domain of law, you are trained to take sides.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
You're not trained to be neutral or you're not trained to be diplomatic.
but lawyers are supposed to be curious, right?
They're supposed to be curious. They're not trained to be diplomatic, right? Curiosity leads you to take sides. And everybody's trained to um give out their opinions.
Yes.
So when you're trained to take sides, you're trained to give out your or voice your opinions, obviously politics will arise.
Oh, I mean, yeah, obviously, but we should not draw. We should be drawing a line between the person and profession. But I mean, law students, I don't know why we keep on getting into those kind of a political like thing. I mean, not political debate or something.
That gets imbibed in you. You're trained to take sides on a legal note.
But like, I mean, if taking the sides on the right part is fine. Taking the sides for their whole benefit.
This is what I'm telling you. It gets into your blood. Taking sides, viewing your opinion becomes a part of your life. 5 years you would have been trained that way. So obviously you would become that as
What's
a person.
going wrong? I feel somewhere we are going wrong over there because we are training people. I mean, yes, I agree that every person will bang their own stories to tell, their own perspective to tell. But at the end of the day, when we go to sleep, your conscience will be telling you, right, okay, what you did with him was a wrong thing. But the law people, I feel like maybe we are going in a kind of like a wrongful way or something, especially like if you watch the law series or this thing, it will be ruthless shows. What the output, it will be a ruthless thing doing to another person, not giving a damn. And especially in India, I feel law fraternity is very short. Yeah. And it's a very good thing. Uh, Maybe younger generation shouldn't, don't you think, or is what do you think about it? Younger generation getting indulged in too much of a politics, so much so that it may affect the law altogether. Do you think? Because after seeing all the students, hearing students.
It's I mean, since you're pointing out especially to the younger generation that we are coming across, younger generation think, or I think they have a sense of feeling that being too open
Mhm.
is okay, right? In terms of the way they speak, for example, forget about the politics altogether.
Okay.
The way they reply to you, the way they reply to teachers, the way that they reply even to their own parents. I don't think you and I had the guts to say something so outrightly to our parents or teachers. We had some sense of fear,
Yeah, that's right.
and that fear is out of respect, not because we would be punished.
But they say respect has to be earned.
See, this is what we are taught from young age. For example, a teacher is in terms of guru who helps us in our life and all of that.
Yeah, we have a point for Guru as well.
We-
Brahma Guru.
Yes, we have the prayer as well. So when we learn that, we would probably have the outlook of that. And these generation kids, I feel somewhere they lack that.
Maybe don't you think the social media is one of the cause for it?
It might be. Too much, I mean, I don't want to bring in a lot of cultural debate here, but I feel exposure to a lot of content, feel that it is okay to be open. And in terms of or in the disguise of being open, they're also rude.
Are we getting lonely?
Yeah,
Even by getting connected to the world.
we are, lot of people are getting lonely, and they are lonely in terms of they seek attention or validation online,
Yeah, I mean,
and not with between their parents, siblings, or friends.
exactly.
This is what we used to do. We used to cry and make tantrum just because we needed our mother's attention.
Yeah.
These day kids, they take pictures, they post pictures online,
And keep waiting for the one person to see it.
see it, like it, comment it. We have had cases in India where child has committed suicide again
Oh.
because he was unfriended on Facebook.
My God.
Can you believe this? This is a level of validation the younger generation are seeking.
The entire Instagram, LinkedIn, everything is running on that thing, no?
Yeah,
Validation.
seeking validation.
Then-
In fact, a little bit of philosophy. In Bhagavad Gita, they say the only thing we search for is acknowledgement and validation. Next comes money. When that sense of feeling is there in kids, then you can imagine where we are leading to. That should be in terms of validation, in terms of their achievement that they do or good things they do, but it's going to a different level now.
No, that's the thing. I mean, even I use Snapchat. But
You maintain streaks and creds.
yeah, I mean, kind of what to do. So the thing about the Snapchat is that, let's say I'm dating someone, or it's like we are trying to figure it out, whatever it
What
is.
you do?
Yeah. So I mean, if I'm actually texting someone or actually talking to someone, I feel there isn't anything much to share, because if I go to a place or a new place to somewhere, I'm gonna snap. They've already seen it. If I call them or if I text them, I won't have anything else to say except how was the food, where I've been. Yeah, I know where I've been, boss. How was the food? I think 50% of the conversation is getting away with the Snapchat itself. You're giving up your such an intimidating details wherever you are within one go. And recently I came across one more app. You know that app where they will send a notification every 2 hours once. Wherever you are, you're supposed to click a photo and send it back. Be real. Yeah, be real, it seems. Yeah, and it's like if you don't send a pic or something on that moment, exactly whatever you're doing, then your streak, I mean, you won't be in that group. It will be a group of people, let's say 10 to 15 people. They all are supposed to send the photos right out.
This is actually kindling my memory. When we were kids, right? When our parents used to go outside for a trip, they used to take these cameras, the Sony, Samsung digital cameras, click pictures, come back, and we used to be so curious to listen to their stories. They used to show the pictures and say, we went there, we went here, and we met new friends. But for today, they are going everywhere. It's a WhatsApp video call. They're showing their friends. When they come back from the trip, there's no excitement because we know what happened on the trip, right? But the whole curiosity that me and my sibling, we used to wait for the parents to come and listen to the stories of how they felt snow or when they went abroad. That thing is not there. The whole emotion itself is gone now. So can you imagine what the whole online platform is doing? Everything is being so digitalized. Everything is going so much online that the basic human emotions we used to enjoy is no longer there. Be real, for example, what you were mentioning.
I mean, that's
Right?
being too unreal, man. I mean, come on. Use the app, but have some privacy, you know. Can you explain what is DPDP?
All right. So the DPDP Act basically talks about how our data is protected online.
All right.
One of the things that I need to make a distinction is when you speak of privacy, right? Data protection speaks about your data privacy. IT Act talks about your privacy in terms of, let's say, sextortion cases, your image. That privacy is covered under IT Act. Now, let's say there's a woman in a bikini on a beach. You can't take a picture of her and post it. That is violation of her privacy. That comes under IT Act.
What if she posts on the Instagram or something and then they take it up to blackmail or something?
Voluntarily posting is okay, but when they use that picture, they're basically transmitting her picture, and that is again a crime under IT Act.
Oh, okay. But she herself has posted it on the Instagram, right? So what's wrong?
So voluntarily, again, that's what I'm saying.
Hmm. So
You
if,
liking it is a different thing.
okay.
But if you take a screenshot and you're transmitting that an image, has she given a permission to transmit the image? Has he given permission for you to take a screenshot of it?
No. But once it's on the social media, don't you think it will be already there everywhere? Like, I mean, you can even never crack who actually took a screenshot and shared it, right?
Yeah.
Because you can never ever come out with a logical reason.
That is what I mentioned, cyber hygiene. You got to be very careful about your digital footprint when you are.
What they share, what they do. I mean, let's say I take photos of some kind of like, uh, for my partner or something, and it will be on the Google Drive or backed up, like a cloud backup will automatically happen. Are those kind of photos are safe at least?
What if that gets compromised?
Oh, all right.
If your phone itself gets compromised,
Mhm.
regardless of where you save it, doesn't matter.
Oh, then
Like the example of loan ad frauds I was talking about, you download one APK folder, the entire phone access is there. Only the device is in your hand. The control of your phone is with somebody else.
how are the extortions going on? What do they do basically?
So, sextortion, the word basically says where you are extorting either money or sexual favors.
No.
So that's the term called sextortion. You would have heard of the term extortive, right?
Yeah.
Where they
You
extort
kidnap
money.
somebody or
Yeah,
something
and
like that.
extort money. Sextortion is where, depending on the picture or a video, where they harass you for either money or sexual favors. And what we have seen is there are two ways how this can happen. One is where most cases where your own friends are doing it,
Oh.
right? Now, for example, we have had cases where, let's say you share your, let's say you have an open Instagram account, open Instagram, I want to stress on that, and you post your friend's photo, a girl friend's photo, and wish her happy birthday. Since your open account, somebody can take picture of that, morph her image, and try to threaten her.
Okay.
So this is a simple act of your mistake because you have shared her picture on your account without consent. This is called digital consent,
Okay.
right? So this can lead to harassment to her where they use deepfake. I'm sure all of us would know what deepfake is already, to morph the picture and harass. And most sextortion cases where we see women victims are where their ex-boyfriends or friend's friend, somebody would have done that. Somebody in the known circle are doing this.
So we are coming to the end of the show. I have two questions for you. One, we had actually good discussion on the how the people are going for that attention and getting lonely by doing it. Too much of sharing stuff. We are in the era where instead of sharing things with our own family or friends, we want attention from all sorts of people. And for which, let's say, we want to share some kind of a photos. And that photo, if somebody takes a screenshot of it and threaten them to share it with their family or something like that, and once again they'll be in a big trouble for that, and they're going to do certain kind of stuff which to avoid that problem, and that may lead to the other bigger problem. So as a society, where are we hitting because of the era which we are in? Is it are we becoming the too moderate, or is like are we I mean, being a cybersecurity officer, you see different kind of cases. Let's forget about this as a digital arrest or that kind of the thing. You gave an example of a guy committing a suicide because his friend unfriended him on the Facebook. Such a simple matter it is. And the ending connection in this era, I feel the first thing which you're going to do is block them on Instagram or remove them from the Snapchat. I mean, we all have done that. But what do you feel on a personal note? How do you take it when seeing this kind of stuff happening?
What I strongly feel is we place our trust on strangers than on family. We place
Correct.
our emotional support on strangers again than on our immediate family. How many kids do you think spend at least 5 minutes peacefully sitting without digital intervention with their parents and speak? But on the contrary, forget about kids, even elders. They spend so much time on their devices. And I know this is something memes keep coming up, but would you the whole point is why not place why is the support system of yours the family but a stranger? When you do that, that is where they can take advantage of your vulnerability.
Maybe dopamine to blame, I feel, because Facebook, Instagram, all those things are built by neurologist. I read it somewhere.
Yes, yes.
And the moment you post a photo and the moment you get a like or is maybe a story or a photo, The moment you get like, each time you keep refreshing it, the likes keep on increasing, your dopamine will be hitting high.
Yes.
And even sharing the Instagram reel, same thing happens. After watching the Instagram reel for 15 to 20 minutes, we feel exhausted because dopamine is spiked. Brain says, no, boss, not going to happen anymore. Do something else. So, what do you want to say about that? That part of posting your photos, then getting into a trouble, especially young generation people.
So, I mean, again, I would all come back to, I probably am very conventional in thinking.
Alright.
It all comes back down to how good you can control your own mind, right? It's not that you cannot control.
Maybe they are designed it such a way that we are unable to control it. Don't you feel?
It's not that we're unable to control it. We don't want to explore that part of our brains or our mind. You know,
Alright.
it's not tough. It's not tough.
Have you seen any cases where you share that if I post a friend's photo sharing happy birthday, and people dating for a few many years, then the couple, I mean, once they are break up, they want to share the intimating photos of them
Yeah, yeah.
in the public or something. What span usually those things will happen? What
Span in terms.
in the sense,
Right.
when do they leak the photos or something?
Usually when the relationship gets troubled. Like we have had issues where post breakup, one of the cases that happened in and around where the boy post breakup posted the ex girlfriend's and her mother's phone number on certain public washrooms saying they're open for intercourse. They started getting calls. So it can go to any extent. And all of this happens when the relationship gets strained and they want to take revenge. Revenge porn is at peak now. This is what is revenge porn.
Oh, okay. Sharing these kind of photos, like
Intimate images. So what I strongly feel is if your partner, either the boy or the girl, is asking for intimate picture, then please think where your relationship stands. If they truly are in love with you, they wouldn't want a digital license for this, right? So why would you want to compromise? They would know how important it is to secure the partner's well-being, dignity,
yes, that's right.
if you truly, truly love.
Yes.
Or if it's infatuation, these things happen. So just think twice before you click your own picture, share it with your boyfriend or a girlfriend or whosoever you are friends with. I don't think they need a digital validation of your body.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So, how does it feel to be the cybersecurity officer?
As I told you in the beginning, I am the happiest here because I feel this is one of the social impact work I'm doing. And most interventions we do, we also get back, we don't ask for feedback. That is not what we do. It's a social service we are doing. But we get a message or a call back saying, thank you, because of you, we could save our money. Or because of you, our daughter is doing a little better, right? Especially in cases of cyberbullying, where we have parents who feel a little sense of satisfaction and then they take steps of being aware of what things are happening online,
Okay.
right? So that one sense saying that thank you itself kind of makes our day. Okay, we could save somebody in some sense. I am not able to go physically save someone, right? I have my limitations. But if I'm able to do this by what I've learned by my knowledge, why not?
Yes. So usually we ask our guests the one last question, like it's kind of a thing of us.
Okay.
What is it one thing which you want to change in the current scenario of the profession, the cybersecurity, this thing which you're in? Like you see it, you don't like it at all, and if you have that kind of opportunity, you're gonna change it. What is that one thing?
One thing is a very limited thing that you're saying, but I would strongly feel the top thing would be a sense of regulation from the government in terms of gaming platform and social media platform.
Why?
Why is because see once you reach a certain age, now let's say 21 or 22, somewhere you would be able to understand what's right, what's wrong, and after going through something, you would withdraw yourself from that. But the younger generation still don't have the ability to control that. They're so fast, they're so open. And unfortunately, they're being so vulnerable and volatile for all the crimes, especially on gaming platform or social media platform. Right? In gaming platform, they talk to the strangers, they talk to the players, and you don't know if the other player is of a similar age. So innocent these kids are, they know how to play online. And when I ask in my awareness sessions, how do you know that the other person is your age? They reply telling me, ma'am, I asked them questions. I say, what questions do you ask? I ask them, which standard you're studying? I can lie on gaming platforms, say I'm a third standard student.
Everybody lies on
Yeah,
it.
But their innocence lies there,
Okay.
which is made use of,
Oh,
right?
isn't it tips which you give for the parents if their kids are going to the gaming, like?
Yes. So one thing I would tell, basic thing, when all of us were kids, we do. I mean, you would also relate to it. Our parents would say, "Don't talk to strangers on roads.
Yeah,
Don't take chocolates that are offered to you by strangers. You might get kidnapped." Why don't you not teach same thing online? Don't talk to strangers online. Why is that not taught? Right? When you're teaching it in offline, same thing also matters when you're going online.
But how can they play online without talking to the stranger?
So this is where I was talking about regulation, especially gaming platforms which has option for chat rooms needs regulation,
Okay.
right? So some kind of if Australia can come up with a strict law where below 16 years you can't access social media platform. So two things that I spoke about. One is gaming platform which needs regulation. Second is social media to have a strict age verification process. Social media platforms need your Aadhaar verification to get your hacked account deleted. That's a thing that they need to do.
Okay. Yeah.
Why not have something similar for you to get on Instagram?
That's right.
You don't have it.
Don't you think that will violate my privacy if they start getting all kind of details? The social.
As of now, do you think that privacy is already?
Yeah, but no, I mean,
Government going to task. That's where a DPDP Act comes in.
okay.
That's where.
Yeah.
That is what a DPDP Act says, how you can secure our data. And DPDP Act is, I personally feel, is too good because the penalty is extremely high.
Oh, okay. If the data.
If data is leaked, the procedure they need to take has to be quicker.
Oh.
And
How to check if our data has already been leaked somewhere?
as of now, you have certain websites where you can check.
Okay.
Like for example, have I been pawned?
Okay.
Is that
Can you spell it?
have I been PWNED pawned?
Oh.
So you put in your email ID, it gives you the places where your data is leaked. However, the Data Protection Act, what we have, puts the responsibility on the person who's collecting your data to tell you that your data is leaked. Currently, we don't have that. Now, we have had cases of data leak in Fresh Menu and all of a number of places.
Can we sue the company if they're doing it? If my database.
Once DPDP Act is completely enforced, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, Data Protection Act tells you that the notification has to go to the data principal, that is you as such, whose data is leaked, saying your data is leaked in so and so place. And then, of course, there are procedures what the company has to take to ensure that the data gets also deleted or secured.
Oh, okay. So last thing, ma'am. 5 cyber security tips in one line, maybe.
Number one.
Top 3. I mean, whatever you feel.
Okay, so number one is secure your Aadhaars. Number two, I would suggest all of you to install something known as a camera blocker.
Okay.
So I would show there.
Yep, sure.
So I hope you can see that my back camera is on, right? My back camera is on. But when I put my front camera, you can't see anything unless I slide a small device I have wherein the front camera is also on.
Okay.
So why is this important? Is because our front camera is the one where we get spied on.
Oh.
And few WhatsApp video calls where you accept, right? Sextortion actually happens that way also. You have a stranger video call that comes in, you accept because somebody you think an unknown number is calling you, maybe your friend, and you have a woman undressing the other side.
Yeah.
So before you cut, they take a screenshot of it. Your face is there. They start harassing you. So it's good. It's just a small sticker that you would stick.
Yeah, that's right.
So this is much needed. And of course, everybody stresses on having a strong password.
Yeah.
I think that is important. Next is all of us save our PIN account, ATM pins or account on color note. I don't know why they feel because it has a password, it's safer. It's not. If your phone gets compromised, that is also gone. So go by the conventional method how my grandparents used to write a diary and keep it at home with all the passwords.
Yeah.
I think it's safer for your family members to know your password than a stranger knowing your password.
That's right.
So these are my basic tips I would suggest.
Okay. So thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
And thanks for also being us with there. And see you.
Thank you.